This is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David, says. You have not followed the good example of your father Jehoshaphat or your grandfather King Asa of Judah. Instead, you have been as evil as the kings of Israel. You have led the people of Jerusalem and Judah to worship idols, just as King Ahab did in Israel. And you have even killed your own brothers, men who were better than you. So now the Lord is about to strike you, your people, your children, your wives, and all that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will suffer with a severe intestinal disease that will get worse each day until your bowels come out. The whole intestinal disease thing is a bit unusual. It's a funny way of God saying he hated Jehoram's guts. Okay, sorry if that was a bad joke. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. So we're looking at 2 Chronicles chapter 21. The past few chapters were focused on King Jehoshaphat. He generally was a good ruler. He did a lot of good things for the people and, for moving the people of Judah towards worshiping God. He himself also did good in that department, meaning worshiping God. And really the only little knock against him that God had was, well, I say little. It was told to Jehoshaphat that God was angry with him at one point because he was making allies with the kings of, the other tribes of Israel who did not worship the Lord, follow him in any way, and even set up priests, air quotes, for other little g gods. So because Jehoshaphat was making allies with them, God didn't like that. Because it's one of those things where it's okay, how much outside influence are we going to let in here? That there's a chance of that turning you away from God the more you do it. But anyway, so his time as king is over. And we move on to what happens after him in this chapter. So here we go. 2 Chronicles 21. When Jehoshaphat died, he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Then his son Jehoram became the next king. Jehoram's brothers, the other sons of Jehoshaphat, were Azariah, Jehiel, Zechariah, Azariahu, Michael, or Michael, probably more accurately, and Shephatiah. All these were the sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. Their father had given each of them valuable gifts of silver, gold, and costly items, and also some of Judah's fortified towns. However, he designated Jehoram as the next king because he was the oldest. But when Jehoram had become solidly established as king, he killed all his brothers and some of the other leaders of Judah. Yikes. And that's right in the Ten Commandments. You shall not murder. Definitely not a good thing for the king to be doing. Was he worried that his other brothers would try and take over? What even is the motivation there? It might explain that in probably 2 Kings somewhere, but I honestly don't recall for sure. If it was in there, the reason I just described, I think might have had something to do with it. But don't quote me on that. So Yeah. Also, I think this might have been the same son of his that got married to the daughter of Israel's one king Ahab. So there was also, like, influence of not worshiping God just from that connection. So, yeah. I'm imagining if Jehoram did, in fact, worship God, he probably wouldn't have done this, or at least would have been strongly warned against it. We do have a note there before we move on at the end of verse 2. So the Masoretic text reads of Israel instead of Judah. Also in 21 verse 4, author of Chronicles sees Judah as representative of the true Israel, which, okay, in that way, yes, that makes sense. Some Hebrew manuscripts, Greek and Syriac versions, and Latin Vulgate read of Judah. But as far as the physical territory, like, he was king of Judah, not of the other tribes of Israel and the kingdom boundaries they had established. Again, another kind of translation insight there that I'm sure a lot of people, even when they do read the Bible, don't necessarily think about things like that. All right, so dude killed off his brothers for whatever reason. Then we get to verse 5. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. But Jehoram followed the example of the kings of Israel and was as wicked as King Ahab, for he had married one of Ahab's daughters. Okay, so I did remember that correctly. So Jehoram did what was evil in the Lord's sight. But the Lord did not want to destroy David's dynasty, for he had made a covenant with David and promised that his descendants would continue to rule, shining like a lamp forever. During Jehoram's reign, the Edomites revolted against Judah and crowned their own king. So Jehoram went out with his full army and all his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he went out at night and attacked them under cover of darkness. Even so, Edom has been independent from Judah to this day. The town of Libnah also revolted about that same time. All this happened because Jehoram had abandoned the Lord, the God of his ancestors. He had built pagan shrines in the hill country of Judah, and had led the people of Jerusalem and Judah to give themselves to pagan gods and to go astray. I'll pause there for a little bit. So, yeah. Also, ruled in Jerusalem 8 years. That's not very long compared to his father. And probably had something to do with him not worshiping the Lord and following those commands from God. Which, him marrying Ahab's daughter very likely had something to do with that. That was one of the things that was a concern. One of the, like, it was even a command that God gave the people to not marry those from other nations and kingdoms who worshipped other gods because of this very kind of thing. But as of yet, God's not, like, totally destroying the dynasty. It's like, okay, yes, this king is very bad. He has turned against me. Turned away from me. But I made David a promise. This is not worth breaking that. And then there are a couple of revolts, though, so, like, certain areas that Judah had control of people revolted successfully. And so the overall strength of Judah was diminished a bit. Note there in verse 9, could read, he went out and escaped. Meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. I'm like, definitely feel free to go back to First or Second Kings whenever it talks about Jehoram there to see if it is worded any different. But point is, he's surrounded, but he goes out at night and either, attacks them enough to like break through and get out of there, or just slips away. But Edom was able to become independent, and the town of Libnah also revolted. Doesn't say that they necessarily also gained independence or anything. But, of course, the main thing, broad scope, is all this stuff about building pagan shrines and leading the people to worship other gods. Which is not surprising, considering his own patterns of worship. So after he does that kind of stuff, we read what happens in verse 12. Then Elijah the prophet wrote Jehoram this letter. This is what the Lord, the God of your ancestor David, says. You have not followed the good example of your father Jehoshaphat or your grandfather King Asa of Judah. Instead, you have been as evil as the kings of Israel. You have led the people of Jerusalem and Judah to worship idols, just as King Ahab did in Israel. And you have even killed your own brothers, men who were better than you. So now the Lord is about to strike you, your people, your children, your wives, and all that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will suffer with a severe intestinal disease that will get worse each day until your bowels come out. Yikes. Like, just for him specifically, yikes. And it is noted by Elijah here about him killing his own brothers. Yeah. Just all around, lots of bad stuff for this guy and from this guy. And, he suffers. I'm not going to say there are obvious consequences, but he suffers consequences as a result of that. The whole intestinal disease thing is a bit unusual. It's a funny way of God saying he hated Jehoram's guts. Okay, sorry if that was a bad joke. Anyway, okay, I'll move on. Verse 16. Then the Lord stirred up the Philistines and the Arabs who lived near the Ethiopians to attack Jehoram. Probably says the Cushites there, yeah. They marched against Judah, broke down its defenses, and carried away everything of value in the royal palace, including the king's sons and his wives. Only his youngest son, Ahaziah, was spared. After all this, the Lord struck Jehoram with an incurable intestinal disease. The disease grew worse and worse, and at the end of 2 years, it caused his bowels to come out, and he died in agony. His people did not build a great funeral fire to honor him as they had done for his ancestors. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. Appreciate the follow there. I'll get back to you real quick. No one was sorry when he died. They buried him in the city of David, but not in the royal cemetery. This guy lives poorly, turns away from God, turns the people away from God, does a whole bunch of bad stuff, and also just dies in a all around, like, inglorious way. And it's like he's not, like, the people don't even really celebrate him when he dies, because he was that bad, maybe. Jehoram, not good, not a good king of Judah, period. All around. All sorts of bad. Killed his brothers, didn't worship God. And then a whole bunch of, well, at least multiple groups of people revolt. So the kingdom of Judah becomes weaker from that. Other people who aren't even revolting per se end up attacking Judah. And as it says, broke down defenses, carried away everything of value from the royal palace. So, like, there's a bunch of wealth gone. And a bunch of would-be, you know, I'm trying to think, successors, I guess, are also killed in that whole situation. And then the guy dies and doesn't get the same kind of ceremony as the kings before him. Also, apparently wasn't buried in the royal cemetery, which is definitely a normal thing that you would do for your kings. If there was a royal cemetery, you bury the king in the royal cemetery, because they were, you know, a royal. But no, this dude was so bad. Just like, nope, you don't get that treatment. Okay, so the note up here in verse 16 does say Cushites, where it's translated as Ethiopians here. Cushites is what they actually were, especially at that time. They just lived in modern-day Ethiopia, or at least around there. Also, note that Ahaziah says the Hebrew says Jehoahaz, considered a variant spelling. I mean, there's definitely still some H and Z sounds in there, and ancient Hebrew was a very different language. You can also compare chapter 22, verse 1. Well, yeah, because seeing as Ahaziah or Jehoahaz, whichever you prefer, I guess, seeing as he was the only son that survived, he's most likely going to be the next king after Jehoram. But, yeah. That does it for Jehoram and his reign of Judah, and also wraps up chapter 21 for us. So, that took a real quick and serious downturn. Yeah. Murder, idolatry, it's just all sorts of bad things going on. Just a single generation after Jehoshaphat's death. Like, what are we doing, people? And, yeah, don't expect that trend to stop real quickly. But I won't get into any other details on that for now. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for links to social media pages, Discord server, supporter page, all the different ways you might want to interact with what I'm doing and find it and keep up with it. And, of course, down in the comment section, feel free to leave any thoughts or questions you have. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. Whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.